And we're
live.
Live?
Hey. And again, here we are. Welcome to Live from Model Schools, everyone. We wanted to showcase again the backsplash that we rolled out last time. If you're not new to this, I'm Leslie Accardo. I coordinate the Model Schools program, and we generally do this 2, 3, or 4 times, I think, during the year.
Yeah.
This is our 3rd episode, and these are archived and available from our YouTube channel, so we'll talk a little bit about that. To my left,
May Isaac.
and to my right,
Alana.
Hi. We have a great treat for you today, a guest that was supposed to join us last time, but probably better to have him here for the full time that we have. We'll pull him up in a minute, but I just wanted to give you an idea about what's going on in the next few days and the next week. First of all, some of you may know that Tech Expo is happening at Edith Macy Conference Center. So it gets better every year, and attendance grows each year, and really the heart and soul of Tech Expo is your presentations from the field. So if you're not sure if your district is registered or you need more information, please feel free to put a message in the community, and we'll be sure to point you in that direction. And if you haven't been to Edith Macy Conference Center, you need to give yourself a treat.
It's lovely.
The venue itself is just pristine, especially if it'll be a nice warm day. And every year the bar gets raised higher and higher. And actually, part of the treat we have for you is that our guest is going to be presenting at Tech Expo. So if you want to meet him live, that's the place to do it.
This is like a preview
of
what's to come.
He's going to share some of what he's talking about. It's very, very interesting.
So it's almost like a meet and greet,
yeah.
Right?
What else is going on?
Well, we have our catalog is going to launch soon, which Alana here, I have to say, has really been working, putting her heart and soul into this. So I think our summer catalog gets better every year too.
Agreed.
Just the courses,
There's a lot. New
oh my goodness, yeah. I mean, I'm conflicted because there are things that I want to take, but I'm teaching at the same time. So it's like it's very tempting for me, but it's also sad because I can't take everything I want. So I hope everybody goes to our website, lyric.org, and looks for our Model Schools catalog that is going to be published very soon, and you'll be able to register and start planning your summer out. Also, on a trivia note, because well, all my colleagues here know that I love history and I love trivia. Today is actually the 150th anniversary of the assassination of Lincoln. So it's actually a very solemn occasion, but to think that such an event happened 150 years ago in our nation's history, and it was just an unprecedented occurrence. So just so you reflect on that and maybe share that with somebody who was not aware of it.
The back channel is open for business, so if you're at todaysmeet.com/lyricms, I see a few of you in there. We'll be posting some links of interest there, but we're also going to be sharing out to our Plus community. So those of you that are on Google Plus, you want to look for the community called Live from Model Schools. We can extend an invite. Lyric Instructional Technology also has a separate Google Plus community that has a little bit more broad information. So without further ado.
Okay, before we start, I just have like a surprise for you.
Oh no!
Every episode we get
Alana,
to surprise each other.
It's just a mini.
Alana always lives for the
this is actually
element of
unusual
surprise.
because Alana is leaving the room right now.
So I figured I'd bring Marcus here.
Wow! Now that is a surprise.
Come on!
Yeah.
How cool! Hi, Marcus.
Fantastic.
So we had technical difficulty last time, so I thought to avoid that, Marcus would surprise us and be our first live guest.
Well,
Wow! Thank you. Welcome to the show.
Oh gosh.
I feel like we should provide you
She's reading all
with
about
a
you.
coffee
Thank
cup
you,
or
Marcus.
something like they do.
I'll get it set up while they talk to you.
All right, Alana. That
You win.
you win.
You
No more
absolutely win.
challenges to
I
trying to beat you with surprises.
we
And
better
thank you. We have our off-screen help over here, Bobby.
better
Yeah,
see
Bobby, thank you
today's
so
meeting
much.
blow up over this because that was
You know,
That was
would've
a
been more
cool.
surprise.
That was a
You know
cool
what?
surprise.
A lot of effort went into it.
we went upstairs to get lunch, and I
Yeah, I
So
saw
then
you
I
dip down there.
awkwardly
Yeah.
dipped out and I thought you saw us, and then Bobby was trying to sneak around for us. Yeah.
This is a treat to beat all treats.
Wow.
I told you.
And thanks
So
for having me.
I have to say thank you to Brewster for making this happen as
Yeah,
well.
for giving me the time to come and visit with us.
They're fairly incredible. They are supportive of pretty much all the crazy things that I do.
So Marcus, without further ado, I have to be honest with you. I looked for about an hour last night at all your digital assets.
Okay.
And I was truly
We were like,
floored.
wow.
The level of just your prolificness as a producer of content. I'm not even quite sure what I was looking at. So if you don't mind, we'll kind of start from the beginning. I looked at your profile as a Millikan educator, and we posted that in the community. But if we would just love to hear about you first, and then we'll unpack whatever it is you want to unpack here.
What would you like to know about? What aspect of it?
Can you just sign your
Sure.
So the general,
For people who
is-
don't know what a Millikan educator is.
Oh, will you just give him a second? This is what happened.
that's the second
So-
surprise.
No, so in his professional account, he can't have hangouts with us.
Right.
Like if there's something going on, so I have to get him connected through.
Okay.
Just a personal.
I couldn't do it with you guys here.
So let me
It's not really a
backfill.
surprise.
Let me backfill a little bit of the information I know. You are
He's
from
gonna
the
share
Brewster
his-
District,
Mhm.
and you teach 9th through 12th grade AP English.
The AP class is comprised of 11th and 12th graders. It's AP English Language and Composition.
Okay.
English Language, and then there's Literature and Composition. It's primarily juniors, and then I teach 10th grade inclusion English.
The first time I heard your name was, I think it was during the summer, a colleague of mine were running an Apple Institute here, and we met somebody from Brewster and started talking to them about what we do here during the year and this concept of Model Schools Live. And you know what he said to me? You need to talk to Marcus. And that was way back when,
Do
so.
you remember who it was?
Brendan.
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 That's
So you've
right.
been on our radar for a
Absolutely,
while.
yeah.
He's one of the key supports in there. He pushes for what you all do for this kind of forum more than anybody.
How long at Brewster?
10 years.
10 years? Was that basically your primary teaching district, or did you have any other experience? Sorry.
I started down in North Carolina. I was only there for a year.
Okay,
Okay.
And I've been in Brewster essentially all my career.
okay.
Well, I'm sure they're very grateful to have you there. 10 years is definitely a good time. You've always been at the upper level,
High school?
the high school level. Okay.
We also hear that you're presenting at Tech Expo this Friday, is that
Mhm.
right?
That's correct.
Okay. So let's start slow, because the way this works is that we'll not be shy about
Okay, good.
throwing you questions or interrupting, and we're also going to moderate a back channel. So again, those of you that are on the back channel, May and I will keep an eye on it, so feel free to pop in that way.
Great.
So I guess I'll just start by what makes you you in terms of your use of technology? What stands out? You know, what you kind of build a certain atmosphere in your classroom, but we'll start with that question. You can kind of help us unpack it, and then we can focus on specifics.
The term I'm using is interstitial for this. I think I would have called it the flipped classroom 3 or 4 years ago when I was building websites and trying to have the kids use them. The interstitial idea is that it happens in the spaces in between. We may have 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there.
Right.
That the instruction might happen in class and might happen through the website, might happen from them at home through Reddit or elsewhere. But there are multiple avenues to get to a goal, ways to get there and so on.
Now I mean, we know what that word means in the science context, but you actually, that was the word that you envisioned to describe the nature of the teaching and learning that went on, those spaces in between.
Right, well, it doesn't just apply to the AP class, but it originated with them because those are the kids who are stretched thin. They have so much extracurricular responsibility that they get home late, then they stay up late doing homework, and are stressed to the degree that they really only have those interstitial moments.
Right.
I wanted to build something that hit them in those moments.
So take us back a little bit in terms of 10 years ago.
Okay.
What were some of the seeds that were planted, or who inspired you, or when did you start kind of thinking about this method, or?
I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and it's been gradual enough that I'm not sure if there was one precipitating moment.
Mhm.
or one catalyst for a lot of this. But I was telling Alana, I think it's all intertwined. The fact that I don't use grades in the AP class.
Now, did you know that?
No,
There's no grades. This is what his Tech Expo session is about.
Okay, interesting.
And I'll get to that here, I hope, in a second. Alana said she will keep me on task if I go down those ramble.
Oh, she's good at that.
Well, we've seen some of your website, and I think there's so much there. I want you to help
Yes,
us
yeah,
to
it's very
understand a little
neat.
bit. So,
But some of my initial experiences in Brewster were about grades. I inherited all of the honors classes in my first year. So the high-performing, high-achieving, highly motivated kids who aren't used to anything lower than a 90 and tend to treat anything lower than a 90 as an affront to their souls.
Right.
Right.
So that it's the end of the world and
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And to be empathetic about it, that's understandable. If you grow up in a society or a smaller group that emphasizes grades, and then suddenly someone comes along that maybe cruelly holds you to a standard. In other words, draconian, something that's fair but cruel.
Right.
Right. That's what it felt like to me at first, and a lot of that softened. But in those early years, running up against parents and kids and administrators and other teachers, and having grades be the fulcrum of a lot of those conversations, led to an attempt to get rid of them, which really kicked into gear in 2010. The technology is a big piece of that. I don't think I could do what I'm doing without Google, without the website, without all these interstitial elements.
Okay, so talk a little bit about maybe some pieces. Generally speaking, we broadcast this, and even though there's not people watching it live, we know for a fact that people will go back to it. And plus, as we're talking to people and we're trying to inspire them to see a different atmosphere that they can create, this will be archived for posterity. So any piece or glimpse that you want to give us insight to, feel free to go ahead and share, and then just give a context for it.
Sure. This screen is up there.
Yeah, but there's actually something going on right now where apparently there's a little echo. That's what Bobby's telling me from the other room.
Oh, there's an echo in our.
Yeah, but your screen should be up now for all to see, so I'm just working through that issue, but just keep going.
So proceed as normal. Yeah.
No problem. This is the website I built this year for my classes. This is a self-hosted WordPress-driven site.
Okay.
And if we're going to start anywhere, I'd start here because it's the hub for everything else. If you scroll through it, then there are collections of recent tweets. That's mostly informational, but sometimes it involves assignments, recent student comments on the site, and at the bottom links to the course Reddit, the Medium page, and Google Classroom. So the students go here first.
So you're the main architect of this site, but students contribute?
Here, their contributions have evolved to be questions for me about mechanisms in the class, updates to the class assignments, and so on.
But they don't actually write on his website. They have other places where they can.
Okay.
They create content elsewhere. Most of the other forums are student-driven. This one is teacher-driven, so we can focus on this. If you see these students asking questions and talking to each other, I can wait in and answer those questions too, and it freezes that feedback in those conversations, like you said, for posterity, so that they can come back and look at what each other had to say and what I had to say.
The first thing that I saw, and I'll be honest with you, is I think we all know, or we have an idea about Sisyphus, but you have a tagline that says, "One must imagine Sisyphus happy."
Yeah, we were curious about that.
That's actually one of the original points before this, when I started building websites. Yes, it's a joke. It's not a happy joke. This would have been 2008, maybe when I was first trying to use the Brewster website and then some free WordPress sites to archive material and give students a place to have conversations and leave comments and so on. And I needed to call it something, and I called it that because that's education from a certain bleaker perspective. You do the same thing for 9 months, and then you get a break and you start all over again, and do that for 12, 18 years.
You sort of never made it out of high school. Is that like the joke? Like
Could be part of it.
10 years and I'm still in high school.
But another piece of it, and the instructive piece of it, is actually meant to show them what use an illusion for, or what use a metaphor to do. The essay about the myth of Sisyphus ends by saying one must imagine him happy. So if you're stuck in school and you're miserable because of grades or your schedule or anything else, you find a way to be happy.
So
that.
you had mentioned Reddit for your students. So just explain a little bit about what that is and what kids do.
All right, it's at the bottom of here, of this website. the course subreddit, and I've got it open over here as well. The comments on the website, to start there, work best if it's quick questions about mechanisms for the course, what we're working on, assignments, or questions to me that need clarification, something like that. But I wanted them to freeze other kinds of conversations too. So we could go back, refine them, revise them, revisit them, and they have a record of all of that. Reddit's the best forum for it. It was suggested by a student 2 years ago. They built it, they set the site up, they even did this is called a snoo up here in the corner. It's me, it's supposed to be me. It's back when I had a shaved head. The students built this so they can talk to each other about really any conversation topic that they want. If you look at the list here, it's everything from the grade abatement profile reports, what they do at the end of every quarter to assess themselves with my help. This is about formatting it. That just got posted 37 minutes ago.
Yes, I see that. Formatting your gap report.
I'll do my job for a second here. This is a student.
Live,
This
this
is
is live interaction.
Multitasking
That's
at a
right.
higher level.
It's that interstitial idea that if I have a
Well,
moment
yeah.
to do this, I try to take advantage of that. And this student met with me and talked about how to format the report that she's doing. And I asked her to provide a link to it that her classmates could use. And this is that link.
Marcus, did it take
That's a
a
Google
while
That's
to,
great.
was this something that you had an idea and conceived it and it basically flourished into what it is? Or did it take a while for kids to feel comfortable kind of operating in this environment? What kind of ramp up did you see?
Why don't you start from the part where you started this whole pilot? Explain that
Okay.
whole process.
For the grades.
Yeah, it really is all interconnected.
It
right?
is all interconnected. That was a quarter, just one quarter in 2011 with the support of the district. The superintendent was supportive, right? So to give full credit there. She came in and helped me set up a quarter where there were no grades and the students at the end that reflected, self-assessed, wrote a narrative, and selected a grade with my help. Next year we did a semester, the whole second semester. Last year was a full year, and this year it's, again, a full year. Only in the AP class, but at the high school we now have another teacher using her college level senior class, same way, grade abated.
Wow.
And what kind of feedback did you get from them, from the students?
It's almost universally positive. Can't pretend that there weren't many hiccups, and it's not, as you're saying, something that immediately takes off.
Right.
They have a heuristic in their head, this way of thinking in their heads that is grade driven.
Yes.
So last year was the first full year, and I think we worked out a lot of kinks in the system. This year is going very well, and the students are almost universally happy about it. I don't think I've gotten any negative feedback this year. So they're either pretending very well or it's working very well.
You also mentioned, I think I saw, that you know, in terms of your toolkit, so you've got the WordPress blog, but you also use Google Classroom and you probably use the Google tools?
Yes.
Why do you, because this was my main thing. If I'm a student in the class, how do I know what, all the information is on the website, but how do I know what I have to read, when I have to read it, and where it is? So I asked him where his hub is for me as a student to know where to go.
Google Classroom is doing that for me. This is the Google Classroom site.
And also tell them who's in the Google Classroom class.
It's every student.
In, what does that mean, every student?
I have 4 sections of AP, and this is the full list. I'll do it fast so that their names aren't up there for too long.
Right.
But I put them all together to encourage that
The
class to
community.
class
Oh, yeah.
collaboration.
Right.
That idea Ken Robinson has it. Collaboration is the stuff of growth. Real
Yeah.
learning only happens in groups. So they work in those class periods a lot. But I wanted them to see everyone else in the course who's studying the same material, writing the same essays, is a resource as well. Anyway, these are the deadlines. And for all intents and purposes, if something's not on Google Classroom, then it's not formally assigned. There's a lot of student choice. They can opt to do assignments above and beyond this. And in fact, that's part of grade abatement. But if it says here they have a report due Thursday by midnight, that is how they know what to do and when to do it.
How much technology do you typically see during your class time with them? Is it very heavily technology driven, or does most of it really happen again in those spaces in between?
I'm lucky enough to have a cart of Chromebooks in my classroom for this purpose. The district let me pilot it starting 2 years ago when I was doing some of these things and let me keep it. So every day I see technology.
Right.
They use, I would say it's rare that we don't have one of these handy, if it's to look things up as we're talking or to work on essays. I'd say 99% of the time we've got something.
And your colleagues that work around you in your immediate vicinity, I mean, do they look at you like a curious element, or
I
just
don't know.
is part of what that never comes up in
Or I ignore it, I guess. But everyone's supported it. I think part of the reason I can stress collaboration and collegiality so much in class is that that's part of the culture in the building.
Mhm.
This idea of supporting each other and looking for best practices and sharing them out.
So as you were kind of, I mean, I guess you call it a journey or an evolution. That might be kind of a bombastic term.
No, I love
But
that.
who inspired you? Whose work did you kind of rely on to be some kind of a grounding factor?
And we're folding everything together, all of these strange elements of the course.
Yeah.
The grading piece comes from Alfie Kohn. He has an essay called The Case Against Grades,
Okay.
where he lays out the research for its toxicity and the alternative methods that exist. In a public high school, you can't take narratives on. We were talking about this a little earlier. You can't do it because if it's an AP class, for instance, and they're taking 5, 6, 7 other APs,
Right.
and this one has a narrative of no grade, it becomes highly problematic when you apply to college, and it becomes highly stressful to the parents and the students.
That was gonna be one of my
Yeah.
questions as a
Right.
parent who's looking to, my oldest is going to high school next year, to start thinking about, all the things that have to go on the transcript, that it sounds terrific, but how do you address the real world issue of that somebody says, well, I want a grade or I want something there. So that was sort of leading into that inquiry.
Kohn suggests that if we can't get rid of grades entirely, he says we should neuter their effects. And the term I'm using is abatement for that. We can abate those effects. Because I still have to give grades at the end of each quarter. So there's a profile-driven, narrative-driven process, an evidentiary process that allows us to work with intrinsic motivation and inherent goals, and then do a grade at the end.
Now, you said that the students are pretty much positive in this. What about, do you find a different response from the parents? Do the parents take maybe a little more convincing, or do they, now that you've done it for a little while, do they understand the process? Has it been something that is, I want to say, as a parent discussed in the community, oh, well, when you get to this class, it's this way. So there's a little explanation, or do you find that you maybe have to reintroduce the rationale for what you do?
I reintroduce it every year.
Mm-hmm.
So 2 things. One, I think it helps that there's an established idea of what I'm going to do in the community.
Mm-hmm.
That helps, I think, anywhere. So I've been there long enough. There's a kind of
Spend a little
reputation
easier.
that's mostly positive, and
Right.
so that the parents know what to expect. But it's also transparency. I don't know that there's anything more important than that. Transparency in what I'm trying to do. So the website is also for parents, explicitly and transparently for parents to have access to every iteration, in fact, of what I'm doing. This link to grade abatement is constantly updated. This is the writing process I develop for kids, constantly updated, and so on.
Can you speak a little louder?
Sure.
That's the buzz in the back channel is they're
Yeah.
hanging on your every word, but that's why the
That's why-
That's
microphone
why I pushed the
is
mic.
creeping closer to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Sure.
the WordPress website, some of the elements that are there are, I couldn't actually tell if that was your work or the students' work, or a combination of the two. Do you generally write a post and kids respond to it? Or do they take pieces where they're sharing their writing and doing peer review? What kinds of things generally tend to happen
On the site,
within that? Yes.
on the WordPress site itself, I've tried to evolve it with them so that it is back and forth between me and them. And this is where instructions are given, overviews are given, texts are given, and so on. Tell me if I'm too quiet again.
No, and everyone says it's much better.
Yeah.
Yeah, the microphone, the change of position, I think, for the microphone.
And I'll hunch
too.
forward like this.
Just
to help.
Yeah.
You practice your radio persona, right?
Or your
Yeah.
practice for Tech Expo.
Oh,
as well.
yeah.
You're
Sure.
gonna have to
Yeah,
project
this is
it
like
in a
your
large-
Oh,
dress rehearsal.
When it's this kind of environment, I think the teacher persona sort of sloughs away, but when you're in front of a group, then
Of course,
yeah.
then it's never a problem. I want them to have a sense of what each element of the classroom does.
Mhm.
Each piece should serve a distinct purpose in my mind, and there should be a sense of self-efficacy for each piece. So Reddit should be those conversations that don't necessarily have to do with our central study.
Right.
And if we pull it up, I'm sure we'd find
So like quick little side connections or.
Just some contextualization.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of the last week telling them that they need to
reinvest in those compartmental ideas, that Reddit should be visited in order to discuss something that came up in class that they know is germane but not central.
Yes.
Well, I like the title here, The Great Question of Life, the Universe, and Everything.
Right.
And I really hope that somebody said 42 in there at
Well,
some
that's the
point.
answer, actually. That
That
reminds me of
is.
the girl, the gold watch and everything. And I'm not sure how many of you are of the age where you'd exactly know.
I don't know that one. Douglas Adams here. I do know this,
Yeah,
this student.
yeah.
She is referencing that.
All right.
I had them set up these posts so that they could try to have an authentic conversation that was driven by their interests and not by we're sort of studying the AP exam right now. Not driven by that, not driven by the essays we're writing, totally independent. So they have a sense that this is what you do on Reddit. Google Classroom is where they submit those formal assignments for review and for
So there's
discussion.
a logic, there's a structure behind all these tools. And Marcus, when you're looking at Reddit, how much do you feel, or I'm sure at times, do you have to inject a little bit of energy, or do you really try to have it be self-sustaining? How
That
much
one
are
I'm-
you involved in kind of being a catalyst?
In the Reddit conversations, I'm not a written catalyst as far as I can. I think there's maybe one comment from me in all of this. I'm a moderator,
Right.
but there are 3 other students who moderate the posts and help let me know what's going
Does that
on.
change over the year, or does that stay, do
It-
they
it hasn't.
self-select for that?
They talked to me about it and
Okay.
informally applied and got that position. It mostly had to do with who was familiar with Reddit,
Right.
considering that I didn't know what it was until 2 years ago. I tend to lean on them
I
for
think that's pretty cutting edge.
That's where they are. I
They
mean,
own
they're.
it.
Yeah, I mean, the kids are there. I mean, you hear any kind of talk about, internet culture or social things like that, and, Reddit always comes up in the conversation. So I think that's.
I think it's the best forum for this kind of conversation. We tried it. I tried it with them on the website, and that was too heavily teacher driven. I was moderating all the comments. I was setting up all the conversations, and
Yeah.
there was an inauthenticity to that, if that makes sense, that the kids were aware of.
Yeah, we've actually discussed that in other conversations about other things we talked
Setting
about.
up Google Plus communities.
Setting up like the conversations, trying to get the authenticity. That was a perfect word for it.
Sure.
Because, it's how much of it is, do we throw out there, how much of it rises organically, the conversation. And that just is what I seem to see as the flavor in this Reddit site, that these are the students actually connecting to have discussions. I mean, that's what we all dream of as teachers, that we want to see our students do. And
But you know what I think is amazing? So normally, some teachers are a little bit scared, I'll say, to have their students not be in a walled garden, as you said.
protected
So
area.
In their Reddit site, it is public to the world. Not everyone can contribute, but anyone can view it. So
Right.
they are learning what it's like to publish to the world, right? But Marcus actually takes it a step further.
Right.
So why don't you talk about that? Because I think that's really important. No, it's
We were having this
Describe it.
conversation about authentic publishing, and so this,
Sure.
Leslie and I,
Double-edged sword.
we're talking about that, and so this is very, very timely for a
I'm
sidebar
saying like
conversation.
the Reddit is not it's posting to the world, but it's not really like publishing.
Yeah.
So
One way to look at it is that there's a kind of factory floor mentality to this. It's messier and meant to be messier. It's not refined
Right.
or polished. I think there has to be something refined and polished to all of this. Google Classroom helps me help them, but it's not refined and polished. I'm using Medium. That's what you're getting
Yes,
at.
okay,
Okay.
yes, and that's what I was looking at. So I think-
Yeah.
So I'll pull that up here in a second. But
and we
to
should
tie it
put
back
that
to
in
your
the chat.
your earlier question about influences, there's a man named Paul Graham, very smart man who writes, a programmer who gives presentations and so on. And I found an essay of his a couple years ago called The Age of the Essay. It's this right here. Worth reading, absolutely worth reading if you teach English. It's kind of infuriating at first and takes a little getting used to, because he's saying essentially literary analysis is a defunct skill and we have to help kids to write in an authentic way. But what I took away most from it is toward the end, when he says that the internet has changed, and this is more than a decade ago, the ability to publish. It's opened up a golden age of essay writing
Yes.
where anyone now has the ability to let their work stand on its own merit. Medium is very new and was brought to my attention by a student I have named Gina, very smart student, as a means of publishing. All you need is a Twitter account or a Facebook account, and you can publish what you want in an aesthetically pleasing way, and still edit it, still leave comments for each other. So this is a collection of student work. They wrote classification and division essays, and you can pull any of them up. In part, I'm using it because of how it looks when it's published. It looks professional. It's easy for them to build multimedia elements into it.
Right.
Easy to disseminate, to share with others, and still lets them communicate with each other about the writing itself. They can leave comments paragraph by paragraph, the same way you can on Google Docs, but in a way that feels to me somewhat more authentic and lives in the real world to a greater degree.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. I pulled up the website and it looks very professional, very,
Sure.
very,
It's clean, it's structured, but it has a bit of openness to it. So I do think that aesthetic is a no small detail. I mean, it's part of the publishing process.
It is.
I wonder if, well, I'm looking at the top story here that says how to lie with Wikipedia. I wonder if it adds credibility to really what it's saying. You were saying the aesthetic to what is being published. And I'm not saying, from your students, but for anybody who publishes through there, because, it looks good, it looks professional.
Sure.
And you sort of, all I can think of is that cartoon where, nobody knows you're a dog on the internet, that you're feeding into this, and no one may know that you're a student publishing this work. It may be judged as if you were, a writer.
Right. The
By
walled
that
garden metaphor works pretty well for this, but there are a bunch of other ones that have to do with enclosures. I haven't seen this How to Lie with Wikipedia, but I'd give it to them. We could break it down. It's got to at some point be the idea that writing exists, that it's a thing that people do. They don't just do it in an English classroom or a social studies classroom. They do it because they have an idea they want to share or a
Passion.
yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, sure.
That
Or
is,
hunch over.
In all of this, so 10 years at Brewster, you seem extremely self-reflective. I mean, that's probably not a surprise. How, if at all, how have you changed as an educator or an instructor as a result of all this? I don't even know if that's a fair question, because I don't want you to jump to a foregone conclusion. But have you noticed, or can you articulate any shift as a result of having this kind of develop and grow in front of you?
Sure. I think I'm a softer teacher. Maybe not. That's not the best adjective, but I think the students might reflect that to you this year, especially. Part of that's that I have a daughter, and that helps.
She's really
Kinder,
cute. I don't have
gentler.
a picture to pull up, but she's so cute. He sent me a picture of her video conferencing. Her and him.
And how old is she?
17 months. In that picture,
Wow,
in
and
that,
she's video
It's
conferencing
so
already.
cute.
The digital footprint
Yeah.
begins here.
she's
Yeah.
talking to my sister in the picture.
All right.
And
That's great.
That's why she's so excited. 'Cause
Yeah, she was very excited.
That's
Her
great.
arms were out. It's so cute. I'll show you.
It's an independent evolution, but it does answer your question to some extent. Part of the softening is working with them this intimately. I guess that would be the right adverb there.
Yeah.
Seeing them online, having them freeze their thinking and their collaboration the way they do here
Mhm.
makes them more human to me and has softened some of my approaches to teaching them.
It's more of a, my teacher doesn't sleep at school under his desk. He has a real life, and it also gives that to the students, that you see another side of them in a way. It sort of humanizes everybody.
I think that's true of every English teacher, though. I wouldn't want to say that there's anything special about that I'm doing.
Mm.
I used to have a reputation of being almost draconian, of holding a line, a clear line, one that I think was fair and explicit and transparent, but especially with writing, of holding a line and holding the kids accountable for it. So the course had this reputation as being rewarding but very difficult.
Right.
And the Great Abatement idea arose in response to that, I didn't want it to be a reputation based on difficulty tied to grades.
Right.
And so the softening has taken a couple of years, but it's this idea that you can be hard and fast in your expectations without holding them to the grindstone.
Yes. I mean, the rigor is not in
That's not the
question.
best.
Yeah,
I
to
mean,
have, to have
you're
high
inviting them
expectations.
to a higher level of rigor without
Right.
maybe the psychological impact of the grade being the sole arbiter of quality. And do you also share, are you as transparent back to them in terms of your own?
Mhm.
I mean,
Good question.
you're a prolific
Yeah.
speaker. I would assume that some of your own work shows up here as well.
Yeah, the Medium site features my own thinking. So this,
And he posts to them also.
as an example, this is a draft. They haven't read it yet.
It's awesome.
But because I've been talking to you all, and because of Friday, I've been putting together an essay that explores the evolution of the interstitial classroom, what I
Sorry,
use.
I didn't install the plugin. It's fine.
But it's meant to do two things. One, be transparent, let them know exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing, so they have a voice in it, they feel some agency in it, and also to demonstrate some elements of good writing.
Right, I was gonna say, this is a perfect example of modeling.
Right.
You're not creating just for them to consume, you're creating for a larger audience, a larger community, and you feel passionate about what you're doing to put that energy into communicating. So, I mean, I wish that, every teacher had that element to it, and,
Well,
I wish that I'd had, an experience like that.
I'm lucky also, and there's a confluence of events, of readings and inspirations, to go back to that question, but also I teach a course in rhetoric and argument. And I took that over very early on. The man I replaced in it is easily among the best teachers when he retired in the country. Literally wrote the book, a guy named Larry Scanlon. If in the college board circles, in AP circles, he's one of the 5 or 6 biggest names. He taught in Brewster. He retired, and I was lucky enough to be asked to teach that course.
Wow.
All right, not every high school offers AP language. And because of it, I had to learn argument. And so I think I have a predilection for it anyway. But that's part of the reason I do this. I write to them, model it, because it's part of a course.
Right.
So that evolved in concert with the use of technology and the focus on getting rid of grades.
How big are your classes?
Varies. I have one of 27, but this year I have a very small one of 12.
Do you notice any difference in dynamic?
Oh, yeah. One of the more interesting conversations, and technology might be part of this because I could compare the way they talk online to the class. The dynamics in the classroom shift, right? Year to year, period to period. Depends on the time of day, number of kids, the kids who are in it.
Right.
And I think there's something to be written about that down the road.
Hmm.
So I've had classes where a group of 20% or so would create wonderful collegiality and collaboration, and classes where 20% would create the opposite of that.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's called the Pareto principle. I think it's on a couple places of the website. The idea that 80% of whatever you're dealing with comes from 20% of the causes.
Right.
Mhm.
So if you have a class of 25, 5 of them or so, they determine everything.
Right.
Right. They set the tone and
Mhm.
things like that.
You're 10 years into this, right? What big ideas are you thinking of exploring? Are there any other models or things that you're wondering right now in terms of, I wonder what it would look like if?
I'm pushing all of the pieces that are in place right now to their extreme as much as I can. And so I don't know that there's a new one on the horizon. The publishing's a big piece, trying to get the kids to share their work with the world, to disseminate that. And I think opening up the channels for that kind of sharing has to happen. So making Twitter part of the classroom, allowing them to talk through Medium in class.
Mm-hmm.
2 of his students, their parents did not want them to have a Facebook or Twitter account, so they cannot participate using Medium to publish their work.
Because Medium is linked to those
Right.
social media platforms.
And that's fine. Part of the benefit of great abatement is each kid can be treated individually, and there's a set of skills and traits that oversee all their learning. That doesn't matter to those 2 kids if they can't publish online. We do something else to instill the same skills and traits. Try to think if there's something else I would want to try. I think you could push the interstitial aspect a little bit and do more from home.
Right.
So even today, this morning, I was able to do a lot from home. And that means there's a possibility of, on snow days,
Yes.
doing work.
I was wondering
That's
if
been
that
kicked
was
around, yeah.
coming. Yeah.
That's not my idea. That's been kicked around by a couple school districts, that you could work from home and do the work, make up the day.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say interstitially, they come to the assignment here and there during the day off. That might be worth trying.
I think it's that concept of interstitially is really a mindset. It's not so much a skill. The tools are there for that interconnectedness and the wall guardedness that hasn't, we've talked about we've seen Google Classroom accelerate a lot of the pieces that the traditional Google Documents and Drive have tried to do over the past 8 to 10 years. And the fact that now we've got these platforms that are so integrated, that incorporate real-time, interstitial, synchronous, asynchronous. Have you thought about, are there, any other classrooms? I know the AP community is probably very small. Are you active in collaborating with other teachers, even from right in your neighborhood? Thinking of the surrounding districts there.
There's a group called the Tri-State Consortium. Since you asked about influences, I think that might be the biggest influence on all my thinking. It's a visiting team is how it works.
Right, yeah.
You know what they are?
Yes, I worked in a district that
Many
was part of the
districts,
Tri-State Consortium.
To plug them, I think any individual teacher who can go on a visit, get trained and go on a visit, that's the best professional development I have each year. So I was in Chappaqua recently, and I'm going to Mamaroneck May 1st, I think it is. Each one of those visits, you make connections to other teachers,
Right.
to superintendents. I had lunch with a couple of superintendents when I was in Chappaqua, talked to them about some of these things, and then teachers from as far away as Princeton, New Jersey.
Yeah.
So these ideas that we're talking about, there's a couple of English teachers in Princeton who want me to send all this to them. And then that opens up collaboration interstitially with them. Maybe their students could work with mine. At the very least, though, it's sharing ideas. And I really do believe that collaboration is the only way this kind of thing happens. I can't do it in isolation.
There's a lot of teachers that each of us work with, and they're at different there are different parts of the spectrum, if you want to consider this a spectrum or a cycle, whatever metaphor works. How much peer review of work goes on in class with these kids, where they're looking at each other's work and they're using a particular lens to give kind of peer review and feedback? And how is that accomplished? Because I've run into a couple different situations where the technology helped facilitate that as a medium, and in some cases where it really was more of a detriment.
I'll see how succinct I can be here. There are a couple of universal languages in play in the classes I teach, whatever level it is. One of them is the universal language of learning. That's this grade abatement document. But this that's up on the screen now is a universal writing rubric that I developed in 2008, 2009. I call it damages because it helps me remember it.
Yes.
And these are the categories here. I work on the kids' understanding of that language, which means that everything is peer reviewed. All writing should be filtered through this. And as an example, I use what I call proxy feedback. If I meet with one student about his or her essay, then he or she should be able to take this rubric and filter my feedback to students writing completely different essays, because the universality of it is constant. This is what I gave to them recently, and it's just a reimagining of it. It starts them with one element, moves them through others, and so on. It has a post-writing process at the end. And if they have those tools, two things. One, the peer review. The peer editing gets stronger. And two, I don't have to oversee every single student every single time.
Right.
You meet with them maybe at different points
Right.
along the way. How long does it take to sort of get them used to that process? I mean, do you find that there's I won't say a learning curve, but there's time for them to get used to that process?
We have to lay groundwork in AP, where most of the paradigm shifts happen, for most of the first quarter, I think.
Okay. So it is.
Yeah.
It's not like 2 weeks and you're up and running. It's a longer process.
Even with the transparency and inviting them into the conversation, it's a paradigm shift. They have to get used to a new way of thinking and learning and writing.
What kind of feedback do you get from your students about it? Are they
Again,
appreciative of the process?
this year it's universally positive. Yeah, I think that they are appreciative of the process.
Do you ever hear back from them a few years later? Because I'm
And
interested.
most
It's
of
not
yeah.
that.
I like
yeah,
hearing.
it's like maybe 3 years you've been doing this?
I'm lucky enough to hear from students who've graduated, and those, no one takes the time to write teachers
Yeah.
several years later if it's not positive. So those are positive.
Right. No,
You don't-
I occasionally run into some of my former students, like in the community or something like that. And I've heard interesting things about, well, in your class we did that, sometimes, and it's interesting to hear like how they view it in a different lens. It's sort of like, I'll go back to, now that you're a parent, you're probably replaying other things back in your head saying, oh, okay, you know, before I was a parent this, and then, so
Yeah.
I see like they're seeing sort of the work that they did in a different context or through a different lens. So I'm interested to see if you've gotten any of that feedback.
I have.
yet.
And I wonder if I'm not going to say it's a softening in the last year or so. I wonder if what it is just a greater attempt, a transparent attempt to be ameliorative when I can be, to hold a standard in place, but to be ameliorative. Or in the past, I felt like I was pushing back against entitlement and a lack of internalization, a lack of critical thinking, the sort of Jeremiah that everybody talks about in education, that the kids are all falling apart, and that I had to be strict and harsh to do that. And I would hear, I wouldn't have kids show up and say you were strict and harsh. And it would be positive, but I'd hear about holding them to that standard. And I don't know if that's the takeaway I'd want. I'd rather it be very much about them and not about me. So they would talk about their experience in the class with their peers or with a text or in writing an essay, not me standing at the front of the room glowering or whatever I did.
No, I think it's, the reason I asked that because I was curious as whether they could understand at a different level why you were doing what you were doing, whether that it wasn't just a grand experiment, that there was there was a reason for doing these things. And sometimes when you're fixated, like, you know, I gotta have that grade, it's so hard when that's, you know, pulled away from somebody. But I think that I wonder if they, through their higher educational experiences, if they came back and go, you know what, I'm so glad I had that experience because it opened me to these things, thinking differently.
Yeah, I have kids come back and say that. It is recent enough that those kids coming back are freshmen or sophomores in college, but they're actually coming back in to talk to the kids here and there. They want to work with these kids that I have now.
I wonder if you can somehow have them digitally communicating throughout the year with them instead of just when they come home for break.
I don't see, that's a good way to push it forward. That's a good idea.
Mentorship.
Yeah, like they could be in the Reddit community, they could be in all of your little communities.
There are a couple of
Popping in
students who have gone into writing, some who've graduated, some who are about to graduate, who were either part of the initial stages of whatever I'm doing or on the cusp of it, who could do that and benefit from it themselves, the writing work especially.
Yeah.
So Marcus, would you consider yourself highly technical?
Yeah, in all definitions of that word.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're thinking about, you know, the whole region that we kind of shepherd as a regional center. You meet people with all different types of perceived skill sets. And somebody might look at this work and say, it's only for the AP and it's only for the super technical. How would you respond to that if that were the perception? That this is really only that this is really a niche, right, for kids that are able, but do you see all sorts of opportunity, do you see a lot of entry points for?
It works for the Regents kids too. I can pull up their website. It'll look the same as this one.
And what is the main differences between?
Right now, the Regent students, the 10th grade Regent students I have grades. There's a kind of cognitive dissonance in that for me. So I've been talking to my co-teacher about whether we can push in that direction. I think they are capable of it, of self-analysis, of reflection and metacognition at that level. And I don't know how much longer I can say I believe this thing over here and then do the opposite over there. You can see they do the same thing. They ask questions, for instance, online. It's not as developed, but in some ways they're more willing to ask questions. So if you see here, I know their last names are there, so I apologize to Sam, Steve, and Courtney. But I go out of my way to answer questions when they're asked, and this is a demonstration of that. We're studying The Invisible Man, and they ask a couple questions and they get feedback in the same way. They're more willing to do that sometimes than the AP kids who feel like they're performing at all times.
Right.
Now, can I ask one question? I mean, you're talking about the AP versus the Regents. Do you also feel maybe age? Because you're talking about you've got 10th grade.
Right.
The difference between a 10th grader and a senior is, just like when you see a freshman and what they end up as a senior, they're very different. Do you feel that maybe it's linked to their age?
Of course,
as well.
I think so.
Like if they were also the same age as your AP, would they be comparable, or would there, because the topics are different or something?
Topics are different, sure. The AP has probably more challenging topics.
Of course.
10th grade is weird, and there's a better adjective for it, but every year I've had 10th grade, and I've always had honors and regents. So every level. I even had a class that was sort of the alternative school, 10th graders for a couple of years. They changed from the beginning of 10th grade to the end more than any other year.
Really?
Right. My wife teaches 9th grade. She's on maternity leave now, but she teaches 9th grade, so I have experience with that. And I have seniors through AP, so we have between us every level. Getting a 10th grade to the end, they change the most.
Huh.
Right. And it's really where they go from being these somewhat sheltered freshmen. In our district, we even have lab periods for them. They have more time in English classes in freshman year. They go from those kids who are essentially still middle schoolers
Right.
to juniors who are driving and applying to college and so on.
Yeah.
10th grade has to be focused on more, I think. And it's one place to push it here. They can do it, I believe.
Sophomore wise schools, after all, right?
I wonder if that's not a coincidence.
No.
And he was also telling me that he didn't want to have due dates, but they need that.
They need
He
that
said
structure.
They need that.
Every age and every preconceived notion of levels. So I really don't think that if you throw AP at the beginning of a class, that every kid who walks in is capable of that kind of work. So in one respect, grade abatement and this interstitial work is there so that a weaker student with a work ethic can
Yes.
take AP,
Yes,
because she doesn't have to worry about the quality of her writing as much.
right.
There aren't these guillotines hanging over her head every time we sit down to write a timed essay.
Mhm.
That's why I think it could work in 10th grade too, because we could focus on the process and the skills and traits far more than the grade that comes at the end of that process.
I'd be interested in a comparison
Yeah.
of your students, your 12th grade, maybe your AP students that are doing it now, and if you started this in 10th grade, what would those 10th graders be like at that time? Like if they had experience with that grade abatement process at an earlier stage in their high school career, would they maybe not need that first quarter of almost training to get the concept? Where could it go with that?
There's some
I'm
that's,
sure you've thought.
I
You've
thought about it.
definitely thought about that, but I'm sitting here going, "Ooh, what an interesting."
I thought about it, and I've had discussions
look
with
at.
some 10th grade teachers at our school. So there's a possibility of that kind of vertical alignment. And of course, it would help if there were some students who had experienced it at a younger age. I don't know. If you ask me in a year, we may have more evidence of it running from 10th to 12th grade to
Are
see
any
if
other
that works.
teachers interested in doing what you're doing in school?
It depends on what you mean by what I'm doing.
Right.
There's one
Doing
teacher.
so much that it's hard to
Yeah, I
put a
know.
name on the one thing because they're all.
Well, this will be part of what I want to ask you all, since you, as you put it, you shepherd a region. There's a sense that it is highly technical to do the interstitial elements of this. And I don't know that that's incorrect. It does require some technical expertise, but you can make a website through Google in 5 minutes. And a lot of the student-driven elements, the Reddit and the Medium posts, the kids set that up. So the teacher is more an overseer. And I'd like it to be accessible. I don't think it should seem esoteric or.
So really, and this is how I feel too, it's not, the teacher shouldn't be scared to ask a student for help. And
Well-
know that a student can teach them things too.
Yeah,
Like
that's one way to
Reddit.
look at it, sure. Well, Reddit was
You
from
didn't-
students.
Right. you
Medium was
didn't
from
know-
students.
You didn't know any of that, and
Right.
you learned it from your students, and they helped you set it up.
I mean, 10 years ago, most of what we're talking about would be unequivocally blocked.
Yeah.
Right.
Or people would say, no. If I don't understand it, we're not going. There's the whole
Or the,
idea
It's
where
open-mindedness.
I don't want to say the sage on the stage, but you had to know everything before you could about a topic before you could talk about it.
Mhm.
And just by the way you demonstrated with your students, with Reddit, that you were able to have a basic understanding, but let them sort of do the sort of running with the idea.
Here's what I would say. I don't mean to stress luck in this, because I part of what I teach the kids is called the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's a key piece of all of this. It's this idea that an illusory sense of superiority undermines all your efforts. If you believe you're great at something and you're not, it's the American Idol syndrome, where they go sing in the early rounds and they're terrible and don't believe that they're terrible. That matters. And so I don't mean to say that I'm lucky and haven't worked hard. I want them to be confident. And as I tell them, I believe this too, that confidence is a rational reaction to doing well. All right. But I've been lucky too. I taught a media studies class for 7 years at Brewster. Got to design it and build it. So I was made familiar with all of this.
Right.
And the course is no longer offered at our high school. But it might come back. That's
Yeah.
neither here nor there. But that gave me an opportunity to learn material I otherwise wouldn't have. So I was teaching the argument course and teaching this elective, and I had all these different levels of students. That helps.
You have a very unique perspective that you're coming to. It's a very
Yeah.
It's such an
unique set of
amalgam
experiences.
of all these, right, I mean,
Yeah.
you're
Right.
developing it in a sense,
As-
based on the
yeah.
raw materials that you're presented with. So
Right.
that grade span of expertise that you have, plus those different lenses. We do have a question here.
Sure.
A good friend of ours from Peekskill, hello Millie, glad you're watching,
Really?
wants to know if all the teachers in your school are using Google Apps for education. So from your perspective, is it something that's just really right now kind of limited, or do you see that that's the platform that everyone is agreed on?
I think we've hit the point where it will be the platform that everyone uses. They've sunk professional development into it. You met Brendan, and
Yes.
he teaches this to administrators and clerical staff and teachers pretty regularly. Right now, we're working on the hardware piece of it. Maybe one-to-one with students. A lot of it's preliminary, but there's money coming from the
Yes.
state.
Right.
Yes,
I don't pretend to
yes,
understand any of that.
yes.
But what I
Just
understand
keep
is
your pockets open, that's.
Right.
is that some
Right.
of that is earmarked, quite a bit of it is earmarked for the hardware, for computers.
Right.
And once the kids have that, if we go one-to-one, then I believe that Google Apps will be the platform for everybody.
Sort of like the common thread.
And it is used K-12 to different extents.
Yeah.
I just think it wouldn't be fair to say every teacher does it, and it wouldn't be fair to say it's just pockets,
Yes.
somewhere in between.
Okay. So your presentation on Tech Expo, and we're going to be mindful of the time, so we'll just wrap up.
Okay.
And if you want to think of anything else you might want to say, in terms of, how accessible are you on social media? Are you on Google Plus? Are you on LinkedIn? Or where can people find you if they want to tap your brain? Because this probably was,
I
One of
invited
the
them to
more-
our community.
this is one of the
Sure.
more reflective discussions that we've had because you're here in person with us, which is another interesting.
It's an interesting
Yeah.
shift.
It's an interesting
for-
shift in terms of the role of technology and the depths that you can plumb
Sure.
with face-to-face, and that might lead into another kind of online community. But
I'd be happy to talk to anyone who is interested in any of this. I don't have LinkedIn. I guess I should do that.
Well,
Or
I'm not-
Facebook. I guess I
I'm
could
not
do
sure
that.
it was a
Not many
recommendation, but
people,
people
yeah.
spread themselves all over the digital landscape.
Well, my wife
so-
tells me I should do this all the time, so I probably will at some point. Google Plus is fine. We have that through school, so I can be reached there. My circle might include just you all right now, but
Okay.
we can grow that. Or email is fine and that email is available on the site. Just click the email button. It's on all my sites, or through Brewster. You can find me.
I'll put the links under the YouTube channel.
Yeah,
Great.
definitely.
I am surprised I didn't fall clean out of my chair.
I know,
With the fact that you
Alana.
actually walked in, so
She scores one again, definitely. We're gonna have to
And,
up our game the next time.
again, so I'll just kind of close with these comments about
Wait,
transferability.
I want him to share one more thing.
Uh-oh.
I
I
will-
think
this will be
I
a
didn't
semicolon,
understand,
yes.
I didn't understand really the extent of this milk and educator
Mm.
thing. Do you really understand what this means? I think he needs to describe it for everyone because just describe what it is and the process of it because I don't think everyone understands it.
Okay.
I know he hates the spotlight, he hates it, so he's very shy right now.
So I just posted the link to your
Okay.
profile on milkandeducatorsawards.org.
All right. I'll
Describe what it is and how you.
and I need to actually be reflective in the moment. I am stressing to my students this idea of confidence because a lot of them are crippled by self-esteem issues or overconfidence, and I think we have to hit something that's more concrete and clinical. Just here's the thing
Yes.
I've done, and it's deserved or it's undeserved. Okay. It's an award you can't apply for, you can't be nominated for, and they spend a good amount of time the year beforehand vetting people in secret.
Yeah, it's
And-
crazy. Listen,
and then-
we just keep listening. It's crazy.
And then when they've selected an educator, they set up an elaborate ruse.
Much like you walking in the door in person.
So the only people at a certain point who are aware of what's actually going to happen are the superintendent, maybe the building principal. That's it. And then they bring the whole school together under some other aegis. This time for me, it was I think it was the Secretary of Education was going to come in, but that seems too high.
It was someone really high up in New York State.
And that wasn't true at all. None of it was true. So we all got to the gymnasium, and then they very slowly roll out the surprise, which is someone in the room has been selected for this award and been given $25,000 as a part of it, and then they announce it.
And there's a
Wow.
picture of his
Unbeknownst-
reaction. Can you please show it, please?
Oh,
I know
can
he
see,
hates
that's
it.
a related
He
video
hates it.
there.
Unbeknownst to you.
Just show the picture. It's like we went through and we saw a couple different people's
This
reaction.
picture?
It's at the bottom.
Yeah, it's that one.
Let me see.
The video that you want.
Oh, was that the video there?
Related videos.
Related
I'm not going
photos
to
and
show the
related
video, but if
videos,
you
yes.
see his facial expression, just like you have no idea that this is happening to you, and it just happens in front of your whole school.
What I would stress is this idea. It's a Malcolm Gladwell idea,
Yes.
which is that the environment you're in, if it's supportive enough, and the individual and his success, the line between those two things blurs. And believe that about Brewster. It's what I said in anytime they put a microphone in my face for this, that I did work hard, and I have to acknowledge that. But I don't win this. This doesn't happen if I'm not in Brewster with those teachers and administrators and students. And one of the things Milken stresses is advocacy, which is it's taken me years and years to accept. But that's why I would be here. It's why I'm happy to do Friday's Tech Expo and anything that comes beyond that, to advocate for the students more than anything else and what they need.
And there's only 2 Milken educators in New York State.
What, high school.
Oh, high school. Only 2 from New York State.
I'm the state liaison for them, so I talk to the other ones, but there are a bunch of other ones.
Excellent.
I
Oh, it says here actually on your profile that you do have a LinkedIn.
Do
Oh,
I?
no, sorry, they're all grayed out. Uh-oh.
Of course they are.
So, I mean, honestly, it was no accident that you were recognized for this work, and I'm
Yeah.
sure that your students were probably clapping the loudest. And you know what? I mean, part of it is the technology, but we always say, it doesn't, the technology could be a mirror. It doesn't necessarily change who you are. It just maybe amplifies. And
Technology.
obviously you,
That's kind of you.
no matter what tool you have, I'm sure.
It's a
you-
tool, and that's a lot of things. People think, oh, the technology makes the lesson. No, technology enhances what's already at the core. And
But
it
for-
sounds
Yeah.
like,
For anyone who is watching this and is inspired to amplify the student voice, some of the main takeaways is the trust that you inherently have in them,
Mhm.
the work ethic, where they become almost their own arbiters of quality.
Yeah.
And
what a powerful
The
lesson for
freedom.
a high school student at that
I hope
cusp
so.
of your life where you're trying to figure out who you are and what you stand for. You're really encouraging them to have a voice.
I encourage
yeah.
everyone who watches this to look at medium.com and to actually look at your Sisyphean height, because
Sure.
you will be duly impressed. I found myself for an hour
We were looking at this too, like,
and
wow, this is
almost
so.
not knowing what it was that
so
I was
deep.
reading, but immediately being drawn in.
Yes.
And was it Cicero that said, fear, fear, fear the writer? That kind of influence and power that these kids have for people that they don't even know, I think
Right.
is something worth mentioning. The
Absolutely.
ability to move somebody. And that will always be the privilege of the writer, no matter what medium that you're in. And the speaker as well.
Well said.
I can see you having a podcast series.
I'd have to speak up. as
Yeah.
you're saying.
But
Well,
I mean, just and I've met some great teachers in middle and high school, and they're all excellent thinkers and they're excellent speakers. And I say, you know what? That is something that's worth talking about. So
Yeah.
maybe that's for you, a professional move.
All
I
right.
would subscribe to it.
I would
To have a
definitely.
talk or a podcast series or just a discourse like
Or
this.
even if it's him just keeping publishing a place for us to look of where he's publishing, talking about what's going on in
Yeah,
his
like a
class.
Well, you're on our
Because that's what
radar
he
now.
is.
Okay,
He's,
yeah.
he's a writer. He's an English teacher.
Well,
so
now you
maybe
can't
if
disappear. Yeah.
Yeah,
Can't
it's-
unring a bell.
yeah, maybe
Oh, that, there you go. Leslie got to use her favorite phrase.
I fit it in
I
everywhere.
can't unring a bell.
I like it.
So anyway, Marcus, your coming down here is so meaningful. And we want to
Really?
thank Brewster and every single one of your colleagues, your parents, and your school that's made who you are. And
Absolutely.
we're going to come see you at Tech Expo for certain, and I'm
Great.
sure you won't be a stranger. So
I hope you'll
Thank you,
check in
guys.
with us somewhere down the
Sure.
road. I want to know,
Sure.
if you do this with those 10th graders, what they're going, what the challenge.
Cross your
what the
fingers.
differences are.
Cross your
Oh, I
fingers
wanna
on that.
know. It's just my curious thing, so.
exactly.
Yeah.
So thank you for those that were able to join us live. And as
Thank
usual,
you.
You can check in with any one of us. You can look for us on Google Plus, Live from Model Schools, and we'll officially sign out. For now, it's Leslie Accardo saying thank you so much for your time and energy, and be inspired.
I like that tagline.